All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Live on the 10 Horse Money YouTube channel. Jonathan is at ball practice once again, so he should be here in the next 20 to 30 minutes. And on the other end, we have Kentucky Lake legend Terry Bolton. Man, it's good to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Definitely. Before we get going, I had a couple little announcements that I wanted to make so I don't forget. First of all, we need some thoughts and prayers out there, guys. Darren Snyder, he's a local fisherman. Many of the people in Southern Illinois know of him. He's had some health complications, so keep him in your thoughts and prayers. And also the victims of the hurricane. You know, the hurricane just came through hot and heavy. It was almost a category 5. And there's a lot of people down there in Florida and on the East Coast that are suffering from flooding and wind damage and things like that. So just wanted to keep all these people in our thoughts and prayers and wish them a speedy recovery. It kind of reminds me of the tornado that you guys had down there that came through your area not too long ago. It was just chaos. I wasn't down there, but I remember the first BFL that I drove to this year. I could see some of the damage that had left. Were you home? Were you in the area when that came through, or what's the story down there?
Yeah, I was home, and actually, we went and took shelter because it was just a couple miles up the lake from us where it crossed, and we knew it had already was crossing the lake, and my wife's got some really good video of it after it had already crossed over into the land between the lakes. So, it was it was one of those nights where we went and took shelter at a friend's house, because this house that we built here last year, we don't have an interior room or a true interior type room. All our rooms are on the outside. So we went to a neighbor's house to take shelter, and fortunate for us, I knew it was going to be close, but but there was a lot of people. I tell you what, my wife and I went and helped, kind of tried to, the next couple of days, the weekend, clean debris. And I'm still shocked at what I saw. And of course, if you've been to Kentucky Lake and been up there now, even though it's cleaned up, it'll still shock you if you remember what Cambridge Shores used to look like.
Yeah, that comes to mind. We fished the main lake point right out there on the south side of that, and just looking in that cove, it's unbelievable. You almost got to go there to believe what happened. All the trees stripped off the hillside, and it's just barren. We had a tornado hit here in Jackson. It's probably like 14 to 16 years ago, and it went right by my mother's house. And it's still when you drive through that area, there's just this void of there's just the lack of trees. It just looks totally different. Growing up in an area, you're used to seeing it a certain way, and then when you go back after tornadoes came through, there's a lot more open space. You can just tell that something came through there.
It's pretty overwhelming. I've never seen anything like that in my life, and hope I never do again.
Yeah. So could you actually hear the tornado coming through?
We could hear it. My wife and I, when we finally made the decision, when it was coming to Benton, we made the decision to leave the house to go to the neighbors. And when we went outside and we started walking to my neighbor's house, and of course my wife's from Southern Illinois. She's heard several tornadoes. I really, not knowingly, we could hear. My wife said, "Do you hear that?" And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "That's a tornado." And I went, "Well, there's no way that's on the, it's on the west side of Benton. Surely, although it's not 8 or 9 miles." And she said, "That's a tornado, I'm telling you." And I said, "No, that's rolling thunder." Well, no, that was a tornado, and we could hear it all the way out here at the lake. So, probably, and then, of course, when it crossed 68, we lost power. And, I stood out here on the edge of the lake trying to look up the lake to see it cross the lake, because we were on the south side of the tornado. So virtually we didn't have any rain. The wind just blew real hard up the lake into the storm. So, we were very fortunate. We didn't have hardly a limb down in the yard.
I was looking at I was watching a video on YouTube about it a couple weeks ago, and they showed the path of it, not just through Kentucky, but where it started and where it continued to go. And you can see it go. Did it go right up like Eddy Creek over there, kind of in that area?
It did. It went on kind of along the north side of Eddy Creek. And then I believe it kind of crossed back there. I guess it went actually all the way up the north side, crossed the interstate I-24, and went that way. It kind of went right up that northern bank.
Yeah. And I remember that tornado that we had around here. I was in Cape, which is probably 10 miles as a crow flies from where my mother's house was, but I could hear that. I thought it was rolling thunder too. The same, it was just kind of just a steady low thunder.
Yes.
I'm like that. I've never heard that before, but I don't know what it is. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's what my wife said, that you hear that when we were walking, and she said, that's a tornado. And I said, no, it's not. That's rolling thunder. And she said, no, that's a tornado. And I thought, and after it was up, I thought, well, surely we can't, it's still 8 or 9 miles. But I guess, yeah, we could hear it.
Yeah, that's scary. Mother Nature's powerful. She can take back what's rightfully hers at any moment.
Right. That's right.
I asked a question to the people on the stream, on the feed out here, if they had heard about the walleye cheaters. Have you heard about the walleye cheaters, that story that's going around?
I've just seen it over the weekend on social media, and I've had several friends text me about it. If I'd heard it, I've seen probably a lot what most people have seen, what's on social media in different places.
Yeah, I'm the big fisherman at work, and I had probably 5 or 6 people come up to me asking me about it and what I thought about it and if I'd seen the story. And I watched, like you, I watched a couple of the videos, and it's super sad that happens. And the weight that they had, I think they had 33 pounds with the weights in the fish. And from what I've heard, they had about 8 pounds of lead sinkers in the 4 or 5 fish. Well, second place was 16 pounds.
Yeah.
So if they wouldn't have put those weights in those fish, they still would have won by 8 pounds or so. They would have blown the tournament out.
Yes.
But I think people that do that, they become more arrogant. They do it once, they get by with it. They do it again, they get by with it. And then maybe they go from adding 1 weight to maybe 2 weights to 3 weights. And eventually, you're going to get caught. They were actually taking walleye fillets and putting the weights inside the fillets. So the weight sagging in the belly didn't look like an actual weight. It looked more natural, because it was like in a piece of meat. So it gave it more of a natural sculpture. So they'd obviously, this is all speculation on my point, but it seems like they had obviously done that before because they kind of knew what they were doing. But that's a sad thing to see people do that.
I think it becomes like an addiction. It becomes like a drug. If they get away with it once, then it's that addiction to try to do it again.
Yeah, and I think they'd won over $300,000 in the last couple of years. They failed a polygraph test in a tournament earlier in the year or last year or something, and so they were kind of suspected as being into some shady stuff going on. Yeah, and the thing that I was most amazed with was that they didn't just get beat down in the parking lot, because the tournament director cut that fish open, and he said what he said, and he threw those weights in the basket, and the mob erupted. And I was just waiting for that first punch to happen. I couldn't believe that it didn't happen. I was like, these guys are going to get trashed right there in the parking lot. Because, you can put yourself in that position. If you were fishing a tournament and these guys had just been taking everybody's money, and then you find out that they're cheating, I probably wouldn't. I don't know what I would do. I would be very angry, and I'd definitely be vocal about it. But I can see some of those people that maybe had a few beers or something, or maybe just a little bit rougher around the edges. I can see them attacking them and beating them down right there in the parking lot. Yeah,
back with a group of guys I started with back in the late 80s, that might have been possible. Maybe I don't know. Maybe today's group's a little more laid back.
Yeah, maybe those northern guys are a little bit more laid back, I guess. I don't know.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I don't.
Have you ever been in a tournament where somebody was suspected of cheating, whether it be like a national tournament or a local tournament or?
Um, locally, yes, yeah, it's happened around here, and they actually caught some guys here on Kentucky Lake a few years ago, and they were they got caught and they were prosecuted. And the thing is, though, they weren't always cheating to win; they were cheating to come in third and fourth and fifth, and But they did get caught. They were catching fish and putting them in a basket, and somebody found their basket, called Fish and Game, and Fish and Game marked the fish and put a surveillance camera out, and they caught them and knew where the tournament was out of that Saturday and went there and waited on them. And sure enough, they weighed in. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 of the marked fish. So they'd actually gone out and fished and caught a few fish and culled a few out, but they still weighed in fish they'd already previously caught.
Yeah, boy, that feeling that you must have when you do that and you get busted and you're just caught red-handed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Daniel T says the cheaters should have to return any winnings in the past several years. I'm sure they will, because those fish are federal property. If I'm correct on that, the DNR stocks most of the fish in our rivers and lakes, and that's considered, they're considered federal property, and you're using federal property to gain personal gain through a tournament. So any of those earnings are susceptible to punishment. And if they did win $300,000 over the last couple of years, say they spent $150,000 of that on a house, then what are you going to do? They're going to have to maybe sell the house to reimburse the government. I'm sure there was a boat bought, along the way, or I don't know how that would work, but I know at least they're going to lose their fishing privileges.
Of course, I think a lot of it too comes back to being able to prove, going back that far over those years, it'd be hard to go back and prove. You can prove this instance, but I think that's where that kind of saves them from some of that.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. So the winnings from that tournament that they got busted in that's obvious what happened there, but the ones from previous is kind of speculation, I guess.
Yeah, then you don't have the proof. So I think that's what kind of saves them on that.
Yeah, and then you're I'm not trying to go on a rant on these cheaters, but then your family's susceptible to criticism. I mean, these guys were locals, as far as from what I've read, they were, locals in the community, and I'm sure their wives or girlfriends, and then if they had any kids, were involved in the community, and then there's that shame and guilt that goes along with that. So it's just a bad deal. I remember one time here locally, on one of these lakes, Lake Wapapello, it's got a lot of shallow creeks. They got a lot of flats coming out of these creeks, and there's most of them you can wind your way through them, but a lot of them, there's areas that when the water's down, it's just a mud bar, and you're talking a foot of water over, several hundred yards of a flat, and then it drops off into a creek. Well, a prop boat, a big glass boat can't get in there. But these guys around here were running jet boats. They'd have a jet boat on an 18-foot aluminum, and they'd blow across that flat and get back in those creeks. They'd come out with 17, 18 pounds and win a tournament. And I know there was speculation about, did they have fish tied up back there? Because nobody could go back there and check. The tournament director was in a glass boat, and he couldn't make his way back there. So once they got back there, they could do whatever. But I know that was always like a buzz down here at Wapapello about those people with the jet boats cheating back there. So you didn't know we were going to talk about cheating and tournament fishing all night long, did you?
I know, I did. But, whenever you get, that's one thing, good media, whenever you get cheaters and things like that, that always brings lots of attention to fishing. And sometimes it's not the good side that we all like to see.
Yeah, I heard something. I heard about a guy. There was a co-angler boater situation, and maybe you heard this story. It seems like it was a couple years ago, but apparently a guy had tied a few fish up to a dock post. Several docks, not a bunch on one dock, but and he would fish and make a cast and get hung up on that dock post and go in there, set the hook, act like he was fighting the fish, and go in there and come up with this fish that was tied up there on the dock post. Well, I guess the co-angler maybe he wasn't paying attention, but after it happened a couple times, he started paying attention and reported the guy. It just looked really fishy. It just didn't feel right. And so
Yeah.
I don't know the exact details of that, but I do remember hearing a story like that several years ago. So people do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Let me check these comments here. See who's in here. Let's see. Yeah, Michael says his only experience with the tornado was it sounded like a freight train. Yeah, you hear that all the time, but you actually have to hear it to understand what they're talking about. Scary sound. So let's get into a little bit of your background before we get going here. Are you a native, Kentucky native, or are you an implant from somewhere else?
No, I'm a Kentucky native. I was born in Paducah, Kentucky.
Okay. And then as you got older, how did you get into fishing? Was there somebody responsible for getting you into fishing?
Well, my grandfather bought a house, the property that I now live on. He bought this property, I believe, and I'm not exactly sure the year, late 40s, early 50s, right after Kentucky Lake was formed. And so, of course, obviously I wasn't around then, but as growing up as a kid, we always had a house here on the lake. So I would come up here with my dad, and my dad had gotten into bass, loved to fish. After he got back from the Vietnam War in the 70s, he did a lot of bass fishing, but did a lot of fishing, period. Crappie fishing, bass fishing, cat fishing, whatever. So I grew up with my dad, fishing as a young kid here and having a house to come to on the lake. And then that kind of got me interested. And of course, as a kid, I was into lots of sports. And when I was a senior in high school, I made good friends with Mark Menendez. And I was getting ready to go into college, and Mark was graduating college because Mark's 3 or 4 years older than me. And Mark and I got in, we started fishing team tournaments together. And so Mark is another big, my dad got me interested in fishing. Mark got me interested in tournament bass fishing, and he kind of helped fuel the fire there. So we fished a lot of team events, and we fished the Bass World Sports events that they used to have here on Kentucky Lake, and actually went to Lake of the Ozarks in the Bass World Sports Classic in 1989 and finished second. And so that's kind of how I got started in, into 80s, and then fishing the Red Man events. And of course, back then I didn't have my dad had a bass boat, but it wasn't a big bass boat. But so I fished as back then there wasn't co-anglers, there was boaters and non-boaters. So I started out fishing as a non-boater. Of course, back then, non-boater, you could run the boat or get in the front, you had your half of the day. So that's kind of how I got started in bass fishing.
Now, what'd you just say? You, the non-boater had half the day in the boat?
That's right.
Really?
Yes. Back in you had boaters, non-boaters. So you had your right to your half of the day. In other words, you could get on the trolling motor for 4 hours. If you wanted it, it was yours. But you could stand in the front of the boat and fish alongside your boater or the guy that owned the boat. So you could do it either way, however you wanted to do it. And you kind of had to work that out. And, I drew a lot of good fishermen here in the Red Man series. And, at times, I drew, as I got better, I'd draw some guy and he'd be like, Terry, get up here and run my boat, and what fish are. And so that's the way it was back then. So because you were essentially fishing against him. It wasn't like co-angler and boaters where you're actually fishing a separate tournament. You were actually fishing against the guy you're in the boat with.
Oh, Wow, that's changed a lot.
Oh yeah, same way.
Huh.
The Bass Invitationals were that way too. Back in the day, you were fishing against the guy that you drew in the tournament. So, that's one thing that's the way the tournaments were back when I first did. You could a lot of times you draw another guy, especially an invitational. You might have, if you could negotiate whose boat you were going to take, you'd have to flip a coin or have a fist fight, whichever came first.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. How you guys? I guess you got to get that worked out as soon as possible. Wow. So were there in that
Yeah.
time frame? How many other circuits were there out there?
Well, I mean, Red Man was probably, yeah, Red Man was probably the biggest one. Then you had, the Bass Invitationals were big back then too. So that was really not a team event, but actually drawing somebody. And I think, well, of course, you had some that, well, of course, there were some others that came along a little later, but then you had by then your actual non-boat or your actual co-anglers had come into effect by then.
Okay. Oh, here's somebody talking about Tony Christian. Martin says, you're referring to Tony Christian. The top of the cage he built was built like a straw opening. He would throw a 3/4 ounce jig in it and catch bass. He argued that it wasn't in the rules. Jeez. Yeah, that guy's he just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth from what I've heard. You probably heard it. You probably heard of that guy before.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Hey, Terry,
I heard
do me a favor. Do me a favor real quick. Click out of the link that we're in.
Yeah.
And then click back in because your
okay.
Just your video's glitching. So click out and click back in and see if that fixes it real quick.
Okay.
Okay.
Leave and come back in?
Yeah, leave and come back in.
Okay. Just
yeah. That Tony Christensen, I know Mark Jeffries and Panger on Bass Talk Live, they always talk about that guy, and they tried to reach out and find him. And apparently he's just like MIA. Nobody knows where he's at. I don't know the exact story, but I know he's one of those notorious cheaters. Mike Long, too, the big bass specialist, supposedly from Southern California. He got caught doing the old feathered treble hook deal, snagging. It's messed up when you got these are people that everybody looks up to, and you find out that they've been cheating all along, and just, I don't know. It's just bad. It's just stupid for money. Okay, we're gonna bring Terry back in. Okay, back in.
Is that better?
It's a little better. Yeah, that's fine. No, you said you had a story before we left on Tony Christian.
Oh no, I just said I might have heard a story or two about that.
You might have heard a story. Okay, I thought you had some good juicy story on him.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, but I was at the tournament when it all ended.
Oh, really? So tell us about that. How'd that go down?
I really don't know. I just know it all ended after that day.
Gotcha.
And there was a whole lot of things that happened. I'm not real. I don't want to remark because I was at the event and there was a whole lot of things went on, and then that was the end of it.
Yep. Oh, here's a question from Holden Woods. He said, if I wanted to get into tournaments, what would my first steps be? Terry, what do you think about that? What's your suggestions?
There's a lot of different ways you can go about it. You can get into, there are still bass clubs. You can get into bass clubs, and that's a good way. That's why I started out in the Paducah Bass Club and fishing Red Man as a co-angler. Depending on your age, you can start out as a co-angler. but I would start out, if I was a young person, I believe I would start out in a bass club or fishing some sort of team events with someone you know. Um, and there's a lot of different team events now, that kind of accommodate a lot of different people. You have, Tuesday night tournaments, Thursday night tournaments. You have short events. You have circuits. So I would kind of start out that way. I think team events is really what got me started, and really drove my love for tournament fishing. Um, the individual events, that can come later after you get a little more seasoned. But I think team event, that's a good way to start, especially if a family member, or, a father, grandfather, brother, sister, friend, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think a bass club is definitely one avenue. I think with a bass club, it's a lot more laid back. You kind of get the feel of what is involved in tournament fishing, because the first several times you do it, there's the time management of it. There's what time do you get to the boat ramp? How long does it take you to get everything prepped and get your boat dumped in the water and get parked? And, are you a person that likes to sit out in the water for a while and just kind of chill and kind of become one with the environment? Or are you good with just dropping your boat in and boom, taking off and going fishing? Some people need a cup of coffee in the morning before they go to work, and some people just wake up and drive straight to work. So there's different types of folks. So you can work that out with your draw in the bass club, and it's laid back. It's not so cutthroat. You're not fishing for a lot of money. A lot of times these bass clubs, you're fishing for, first place might be $100 if you got a 10 boat bass club. It's not like big cutthroat. It's not high entry fees. You don't feel like you're just donating to everybody, and you're not going to go in depth a lot with these smaller bass clubs. And then, like you said, the team tournaments is another great way. Maybe in that bass club, you meet somebody and you kind of click. You guys got good chemistry in the boat together. Maybe you're like, we'll go fish some USA Bassins or some Tuesday nighters or Wednesday nighters and do that for a while and get your feet wet. And high school fishing, that's gotten real popular. High school, there's a lot of high school teams out there. That's a great way to get your feet wet. You may have a coach, somebody like a mentor that'll help you through. And then if you decide to go on to college, there's that avenue. And then I would say there's a lot of major league fishing stuff out there. There's a lot of smaller circuits that you get that same feel, you get that competition, and they're a little bit lower entry fees. So, that's my recommendation. Just start out with a bass club or a buddy tournament and see how you like it. That's a good question, though. Really good question. There's a lot of people out there that they watch tournament fishing. They watch the Major League Fishing and the Bassmasters and stuff on TV, the live streaming, and it looks really fun. But they're like, how do you get involved in that? And I've been fishing the BFLs out of the back of the boat for quite a while. That's another thing that I would recommend doing after you fishing a bass club or fishing some of these team tournaments. Jump in the back of the boat. I fished with Terry a couple years ago. We fished, I think it was in the Super Tournament. So you fish these BFLs, you'll draw locals. You'll draw guys that are just getting into it, that are kind of green, and maybe this is their first season. You'll draw people that are in their 70s. You'll draw people that are 19, just out of high school, 18, 19. So you get a variety of people that you're fishing with, and you learn all kinds of stuff from everybody. You can learn a lot just by fishing in the boat. You can learn what not to do as much as you can learn what to do. So it's a great experience.
And that's what I always say. A lot about being a good tournament bass fisherman is you got to learn as much from the bad days as you do the good. And, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, when you catch a bunch of fish, oh, yeah, it was a great day. But the days that you don't really catch much, that's the ones you really need to learn on.
100%. And it seems like as bass fishermen, or maybe it's just humans in general, we're never satisfied with our results. At least I'm not. I always have that. Going into the tournament, I'm like, I hope I can get a top 20. Well, then say I finish 16th. I'm like, man, I wish I would have finished 10th. And then if I finished 10th,
Yeah.
I'm like, that one fish I broke off, that would have put me right there in 5th place. Or, I was 14 ounces away from winning the tournament. It started out, you're just glad to be able to get off work to go fishing, and now you want to win the thing.
Well, that's why I say I always tell people, make sure you make your goals attainable. And, I feel if I can walk away from a tournament and say that, I fished as good as I could that day or that week or whatever that might be, then I'm pretty happy with that. You can always, because bass fishing's a one sport that you're going to lose way more than you're ever going to win. So you got to have something to kind of build on.
Yeah, you're right. And if you fish clean that day and you took advantage of everything that was put in front of you, you made good decisions, then that's all. You got to leave that out on the water. There's a lot of times, speaking for myself, out of the back of the boat, where maybe I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to catch fish, and I got the bites that I got. Sometimes I catch 3 fish, my boater catches 3 fish. He had 2 keepers and I had 3 shorts. That's just the way it goes sometimes. But it's those days when maybe you let a fish jump off on a jerk bait or something because you're horsing them to the boat, and it happens so quick, and you're like, man, I worked. It was 2 hours between bites, and I finally get that bite, and then I horse this fish because I'm so excited. I just want to get him in the boat, and he jumps off, and you're like, oh, why'd that happen? Martin's got a question. This is something I wanted to kind of segue into. The Major League Fishing Pro Circuit is something you've been fishing for quite a while, and they recently changed that. They've eliminated that, and they've got a new circuit. It's called the Invitationals or something of that sort. Is that correct?
That's right. It's called the Invitationals.
Okay. So Martin's question was, what's Terry going to fish next year?
Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. Well, you see, I'm 52 now, so I always I didn't really know how much longer I wanted to keep doing this. I didn't want to be doing it much into my 50s. Well, I'm 52 now, so I'm kind of at the point in my career where I've kind of got 2 choices. Either invitations or away and hang low. And I've started bass in that 25 series. Kind of did that then. I'm 52 years old, and I don't want to go fish bass opens, and I won't fish bass opens. So I've kind of got 2 choices. I can either go fish the invitationals or I can hang it up. So that's kind of where my choices are right now.
Right. So how much different are the invitationals first versus the pro circuit? Like, what are some of the changes that have happened?
Well, the biggest change is there's no championship now, where we always had, of course, back when it was FLW, it was the Forest Cup, or whenever it first became under ownership of Major League Fishing, it was called the Title, Pro Circuit Title event. So we've always had a championship to fish for at the end of the year. Now, what they're offering now is if you win an event, you automatically qualify to go to fish the Red Crest, which, that's fine for 6 people who don't have a championship fish for. We fish 6 events to try to be in the top 8 in points to go on to the Bass Pro Tour. And there's 150 full field, and the payback's cut just a little bit. You're going to pay 50 places instead of the 75 that it had for the last couple of years.
Okay. That's kind of,
And
that's
we
a
are,
significant change.
yeah, we are going to go back to a 3 days of practice like we used to have. You know, we've been 2 days of practice for the last few years, but we're going to go back to 3 days of practice with an off day. And then we're only going to have 3 days of tournament. So everybody's going to fish for 2 days, all 150 people. And then they're going to cut it to 50 for the final day and declare a winner. But you're not,
Okay.
I don't believe we're not starting at, I don't think we're starting at 0. I believe the weights are cumulative.
That's what I heard this week
Yeah,
was
which I,
cumulative weights, which I like that
yeah,
a lot better than zeroing and on day 3
Right.
or the final day.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the zeroing of on day 3 or day 3 and 4. I'm not a big fan of that. I think tournament weight should be cumulative.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I understand why they're doing that. It makes better drama, makes better TV, but I don't think it's fair to the guy that, you know, comes into day 3 with a 10 or 15 pound lead, and then he has to zero, and
Yeah.
it just becomes a, you know, 1-day BFL or a shootout or something.
Yeah, at that point, just make it a 1-day shootout. I mean, because essentially that's what it is. I mean, you fished a couple days to get there to make the top 50 or the top 20, then it's a 1-day shootout, and you got to really manage your fish at that point. So,
well, if you look back at the events this season, the 6 we had where they zeroed the weights on the final day, I think pretty much maybe one event that I can think of right offhand where the guy who was leading didn't win. You know, so I mean, it kind of sort of worked out pretty good this year by zeroing, but next year that won't be the case.
So how, this is an invitational, how are they coming up with the fishermen or fisherwomen that will be participating in the invitationals?
The first get the invitation, I'm the top 75 this year's point standings in the tackle warehouse circuit. The trying to, I believe 5 from each series of the Toyota series points, top 5 points, which I believe that's correct. Your top 5 from each division of the Toyota. Your let's see, I know I'm going to forget some of this. The top 15 all-time points list from the pro circuit. I'm trying to remember all this. The 6 Bass Pro Tour anglers who were in the bottom 6 of the points on the Bass Pro Tour that are leaving the Bass Pro Tour to come to fish, they'll get an invitation to fish these. Then also any Bass Pro Tour anglers that want to fish all 6 events. And I believe I'm leaving 1 or 2, maybe the All-American winner. I may be leaving 1 or 2 out, but that's basically the gist of it. I may be leaving 1 or 2 out.
Okay.
And
yeah,
then,
that champion.
of course, after they go through, I think if you count up that number that of all that, yeah, if you count up that number, there's 120 invites, and then after they go through those, I think that's right. I think there's 120, and then it goes back to the Bass Pro Tour to any of the Bass Pro Tour anglers that want to jackpot an event. So, in other words, if there's an angler on the Bass Pro Tour that per se just wants to fish Lake of the Ozarks, he can just enter 1 event. And then after those are set, then they'll come back to the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit and go down the list and pick any angler and start to go down the list and pick anglers that would like to fish next year, all 6 events.
Okay, and then the top.
I think I did probably leave 1 or 2 out, but that's.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see how it's just like a conglomeration of a lot of different things that come together to complete the field. So the top, the ultimate goal is to come out of the Invitational, is to go to the BPT. Is that right? It's like the top, is there top 6 or top 10? How's that work?
I believe it's the top 8. Top 8 in points go to the Bass Pro Tour.
Now there's no championship, correct?
That's what yeah. There's not.
No championship, 6 tournaments. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that's the toughest pill to swallow for me personally, from a guy who has, fished the FLW Tour for as many years, and then even the pro circuit once it was bought by MLF. I think that's the toughest pill to swallow because, my goal was to always make the championship, and, I made 17, and that was always the toughest pill for me to swallow, was not having a championship to fish for, because that's still the hardest thing to kind of take, to say, well, okay, well, your end goal now is to try to make that Bass Pro Tour, but prior to that, it was to make that title championship, or, whatever that, before that it was FLW, but the last 3 years it's been the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit title championship. So that is probably the hardest thing to swallow, is not having a championship to fish for after, all these years of fishing. And that was always the end goal. I always kind of looked at my season as a success or failure on whether or not I made the championship. And, not having that now, that's kind of a little different for me to kind of get a grasp on it.
Yeah, I can understand that. That'd be difficult. I was trying to relate that to like BFL terms, almost be like they took away the regional, and the winner of each, regular season tournament went to the All-American somehow in a weird way.
Or just the opposite of that. It was, they took away the All-American. They took away the pinnacle right, that you're trying to achieve. You just get to go fish a regional, win a boat, and then go home. Then we're done.
Yeah.
So right.
That's rough.
Yeah. That is the hardest thing for me, is the not having a championship personally. And I think if you ask most anybody that's fishing the pro circuit, they'll tell you that is the worst thing of it all.
Are you going to fish the Toyotas? I don't know if you guys talked about that, but are you going to fish the Toyotas next year?
I know they're having one here next year in April. And so I don't know that I'll fish all of them, but I may try to fish the one here possibly. I hadn't really looked at it on paper yet, but that's a possibility.
I haven't looked into it. But I think that Toyota Championship pays well when you qualify for that. That's got a pretty decent payday. Obviously, a long road to get there.
It does. It does, and I think it's got a pretty good first place prize.
Andy says, is Bass University worth subscribing to for a weekend angler? You're saying yes? I'm saying yes, because
I in the past I was subscribed to it when I had a desk job and I could put that on play in the background. Being on the road all the time now, it's kind of hard to. But if you got the time to listen to it, it's definitely worth the seminars, everything that you get out of it. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you got the best of the best on there. And but if you do, Andy, if you do subscribe, make sure you budget a little bit of time to support the 10 Horse Money YouTube channel. Just for sure. Throwing that out there.
It will take up
shameful plug, non-shameful plug.
It will take up a lot of your time on that, because it's a lot of good stuff. I've been to the Bass University, and it was neat to look back and see, whoever was speaking at that one. I think Denny Brower, the one that sticks out. Denny Brower was speaking, and I look back, and the 4 or 5 other guys, the pros that were there speaking, stepped in the room and they were listening to Denny speak. So just shows how well respected a lot of these anglers are. So it's not just for weekend anglers, it's for the masses, pros included, because we can always be learning. So I caught a little bit of that when I was driving up here. The you learn more from your bad days than you do your good days, and you can learn
Yeah,
a lot from guys that have had a lot of bad days on the water. So.
Yeah, the Bass University guys, they spend a lot of time and effort traveling and shooting content. They do a really good job.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. A lot of good seminars. They offer a lot of times they offer a discount for the first month's free.
If
or
you're a new
something.
member, it's free trial, 10 days, something like that. It's a good deal. So, and you can get a lot of content in 10 days. Just take 10 days off work and just roll.
Yeah, Sean, that's right. We were talking about how you go to a tournament and you just want to get a check. And then when you're driving home, you're like, man, I was one fish away from
I heard
finishing
you guys
20.
talking about that.
Yeah. And it's like you always want to, I guess it's just a competitive nature. You just want to do better. I mean, I think even when you win or you finish in the top 5, you're still, there's that. I think a lot of it is the anticipation of a tournament coming up. You're thinking about it. You're a couple weeks out. You're doing your map study. You're thinking about your baits, the season, the time of the year, what you want to happen. You kind of visualize your day, and it's building and it gets closer. Next thing you know, you got to pack, and then you're traveling to the tournament site. You do your practice, then you're in the middle of the tournament, and then it's over. You drive home and it's quiet. And it's like, noise
is gone.
It's gone. It's all over. It's like this huge buildup, and then it's gone. And so you're just, I think you start playing through your day in your head on your ride home. But I think a lot of it is that there's just this little void now, and you want it back, and it's like that itch.
So what you just said there, and I'm sure Terry can relate to this, that separates a lot of weekend guys from guys like Terry that do it for a living, is we play it back in our head, our day back in our head on the way home. They played back the last hour while they were fishing to make that next decision. And the ones that can do that better are the ones that succeed more.
Processing that data.
You can process that information. I mean, how many times I know I can account for it. You've been at the lake and either you were hard-headed or you did not make that decision that you should have. You look back on your ride home and it's like, man, if I would have just went over and fished brush piles all day, I probably would have had a decent bag.
Yeah, and then you want to go back the next day and try that.
Yeah, and weekend guys, it's hard to, if I went on Sunday, like yesterday, I went and
you got to wait a whole week to go back.
It's rough, bud. It's real rough.
And then it's all changed.
All changed.
Maybe that was the right thing to do.
There was a cold front that came through, and now I'm back to square one.
Yeah,
but we got grass, so Terry knows a little bit about grass in Kentucky Lake, but
yeah, we don't have that now, but we need
not anymore. But fingers crossed, right?
We need some, yes.
Connor says, what's your favorite bait out on Kentucky Lake for this time of year?
Well, that's kind of a tough one, Connor. I'm awful fond of spinnerbait. So I would say a spinnerbait would be one of my favorites day in, day out. A topwater bait's always good this time of year, but a topwater bait can leave you hanging a lot too. I've had a lot of tournaments in the fall where I had a lot of stock put in a topwater bait and it let me down pretty bad. So I don't know. I think day in, day out, a spinnerbait's a pretty versatile bait. We're going into October and fish are shallow, but then again, you've still got some fish. The bait's starting to push back, but even with this, our water's starting to get really low. It's starting to get down near winter pool pretty quick, faster than it's usually getting close in October, but I think it's going to make it pretty early this October. So, you especially when you're dealing with a drawdown, you'll still have a lot of bass that'll be out there in that 5, 6, 7, 8 feet of water. And, a spinnerbait's a good bait. It kind of versatile. You can fish it shallow. You can fish it deep. That's still probably my favorite bait in the fall.
Cover a lot of water with that spinnerbait too, and I think that's a big key in the fall as well, is covering a lot of water.
It is, and even though we're getting more bass back in Kentucky Lake, And but still, I think these fish are in little pods and groups, and you need to keep moving and make a lot of casts, because most everybody that I've talked to that's had any success in a tournament over the last month, it'll boil down to 15 minutes. Maybe the first place they stopped, they might have caught 4 fish and, fished the rest of the day and only caught 2, or maybe, pull up on one stretch of bank at the end of the day and catch 2 or 3 fish that, so that's one thing I'll say is, these fish, there's a lot more bait in this lake this year than there has been in several years. And I think, these fish they can eat anywhere. So it's all about making a lot of casts and a lot of high percentage areas. And that's where spinnerbait kind of shines.
You mentioned spinnerbait, and one of the things that I had written down was talking about fishing a spinnerbait out deep. I mean, most of us think of spinnerbait as kind of a shallow bait, maybe 0 to 5 foot, kind of bank oriented. But there's also a place for a spinnerbait out deep. And I know you've had good success in the past fishing the spinnerbait out deep. So talk a little bit maybe about some of the places you look for, the cover, that kind of situation, maybe the baits that you would throw, the spinnerbait, like the weights, the blades, colors that you would throw out deep.
Well, I try to keep it pretty simple when it comes to color. Chartreuse and white. I mean, just I throw chartreuse and white probably 95% of the time. I mean, I do mix a little white in here and there, but 95% of the time, I'm going to make the color really easy. I always throw an alternating color contrast blades. In other words, I'll throw a silver and a gold combination, with the gold blade being the hanging blade, being the blade that would be on the swivel. And, predominantly what I'm going to look for this time of year, a lot of times this time of year, I don't necessarily fish it real deep, but I may fish it in 6-7 feet of water. So a lot of times I'll go with a 1/2 ounce. But once you start to get over 10, 12, 15 foot of water, that's when I want to go to a 3/4. And one thing I've learned through the years, the best willow leaf combination for a 3/4 is a number 3 willow in the front and a number 5 willow being the hanging blade, or the blade that's on the swivel. That blade seems to give you the best rotation at a slow speed on a 3/4 ounce head. Now, if you want to go up to a number 6, you can fish a 3/4, but if you're fishing it at depth, in other words, if you're trying to get a 3/4 with a number 6, say 15 foot deep, you're going to have to fish that bait so slow, your blade may not make a full rotation. It may just kind of wallow. So if you want to go up in a bigger blade, like a number 6 or a 7, then you're going to want to go up in weight size on the head of the spinnerbait. So I'd go to a 1 ounce. So just keep in mind, you can take a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, and everybody thinks, oh, well, that's a big spinnerbait. Well, I like big heavy spinnerbaits, but I also like to fish big heavy spinnerbait shallow. So you can take a 3/4, and you can put a number 3 willow and a number 6 willow, man, you can fish it down the bank just like you would a 1/2 ounce. And of course, what we used to do back in the day when we had lots of milfoil in Kentucky lakes, a 3/4 ounce, or excuse me, 3/8 ounce Colorado willow was a very popular bait here, with about a 4.5 willow with about a number 2 Colorado. That was a really popular blade combination that was really deadly in that grass, especially in that milfoil this time of year on Kentucky Lake. So and I always tell people, try to match the bait, the size, but I'm kind of a big fan of double willows, but also I like a Colorado willow, because especially if I got a little more off-colored water, because you get a little more vibration. Because one thing I always tell people when it comes to spinnerbaits, whenever you increase the front blade, in other words, you got the blade that's on the swivel, the front blade, the bigger you make the front blade, the less vibration that your hanging blade is going to have. So that's why, like, a Colorado willow has more vibration, because you got that small Colorado. It's not taking away from that vibration of that willow. So I'm probably told you more than you wanted to hear right there, but
no, that's awesome. That's good information. I never thought about that, about how much the front blade would affect the vibration of the hanging blade. That makes total sense though.
Think
Total
about a
sense.
single spin bait.
Yeah, just bumping.
Vibrate.
Yeah.
So in other words, that's what I always tell people. If you're going to throw a tandem and you want more vibration, just go down smaller in your front blade. You can still keep that stability, but then you can, and that you may need to fish it through cover, but then you can also get more vibration.
Do you ever put any kind of trailer on your spinner baits, as far as like a plastic trailer of some sort?
Every time I throw a spinner, it has a trailer on it. Every time. I never, ever, 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 ever throw a spinner bait without a trailer.
What's your top 3 trailers?
Probably a Zoom split tail is one. If I'm and I have a trailer that I throw that I've got some white Zoom U-tails. It's a ribbon tail, but I also have a trailer that's not made anymore that I still keep kind of close and dear to my heart. It used to be made down in Jackson, Tennessee, made by Harville Manufacturing. And I actually had Guido Hibden pour these for me, and Danny Moore had Guido get the mold after Harville sold several years ago, and to Lucky Strike. And yeah, it's a small ribbon tail trailer that doesn't really it gives you it doesn't, it's not a big bunch of plastic to where it gives the bait a lot of lift, but it does give the bait action.
Okay.
So it sounds pretty simple. You're not throwing big giant swim baits on there or doing anything crazy. Just something to add a little bit of bulk to it.
I've tried some swim baits, but I don't like the way it, and sometimes if you put that swim bait tail on there, depending on the swim bait tail, it actually takes away from the bait, I think, the feel. So, I want something to give me a little bulk, especially if I'm fishing a spinnerbait at depth. I want them to be able to get a good look at it, but I don't want it to take away from the bait, the vibration of the bait.
What about a trailer hook?
That's what my next question was.
Never throw a trailer hook. Except
Never.
only time I throw a trailer hook is if I'm fishing up north for smallmouth and I'm burning a spinnerbait. But in my theory, the ones I'm fishing for don't need a trailer hook.
Yep.
You're going to dig it out of the back of their throat.
The ones I'm fishing for with a spinnerbait, if he's worthy of me catching him, he's going to get it.
I love it. I love it.
This
is from Tom. He says he remembers the days Terry and Sean Penn were the team to watch for on Kentucky Lake.
That's right. Me and Sean's getting ready to fish the Jetta Marina Classic here, October 22nd, here on Kentucky Lake. We got to fish in April in the Jetta Marina, and we finished fourth together. And so I'm going to get to fish 2 tournaments, team tournaments with Sean Penn, my old partner. This first time we fished 2 tournaments together, team events in 1 year, and golly, I don't know, it may have been 12, 15 years. So I'm really super excited because I told him I don't get to fish team tournaments, and that's really exciting. That's why I got into bass fishing. Now I don't get to do it. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're getting old, but we'll still have a good time.
That's cool, man.
I think it's crazy. I mean, I know there's been rumors and talk and all kinds of noise about team tournaments, and I know the MLF is doing a team series, but I'd like to see 2 guys just get in a boat, and I'd pay to watch that. 2 pros get in a boat and fish with each other, not against each other, with each other. See how their brain works and how the day goes.
Yeah, I think that would be fun to watch, and of course, like I said, I think to me, team events are what really got me into different things, or got me really into tournament fishing, and it's something I don't get to do. I get to fish just a couple every year now, and so when I do anymore now, I really savor it because I get to fish all year by myself, and if I fail, it's pretty much on me. But at least if I got a team partner, I can blame it on. I can always blame it on Sean. Broke one off, or because anybody that's watching this that knows Sean, that knows me and Sean, always knows Sean's going to break one off. It doesn't matter Sean's 50 years old or Sean was 20 years old. He's going to break one off.
It's going to be a big one too, probably, when it breaks off.
Yes, I could write a book of stories about it.
Speaking of breaking one off, I broke one off yesterday, and I wasn't happy about it.
You did?
On 50-pound braid.
You know what? I was punching last week, and I set the hook with 50-pound braid, and my line broke. Well, I don't know if it can. I don't know if it. I thought it was a welded hook, but I don't know because I didn't get the hook back.
Mine snapped.
You're snapped.
Snapped.
Dang, son.
Now, also my feet got wet when the fish hit it. If that tells you anything.
Was it a carp?
No, it was a largemouth.
Holy cow.
I was burning a frog back in, and it just goes kabloosh. I mean, it was right there at the boat. My feet were wet. He splashed me. That's how close he was. And, of course, he hit, and I dropped the rod, and I just reared back on him instead of, that's instinct, right? And kaboom, and you set the hook, and I came here, and I felt weight, and I felt one, turn, and it was pow. I never got to look at him, nothing. I know it was a big one, but that's all. I don't know how big. It could have been a 4-pounder that did that. It could have been a 8-pounder. I don't know, but he was angry, and he took my frog. What's that, Terry?
It's your fish. You can go with 8-pounder. It's your story.
I'll go with an 8.
Yeah,
I don't care.
I'm going at least 7.5.
7.5.
Yeah, he might as well. Yeah, that's the one beautiful thing about the one that got away. You can make it whatever you want.
Yep.
Have you broke braid before, Terry?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah, this was the first time I don't, like I said, I don't know that I actually broke it. I almost think that it slid through
the hook.
I think I put enough pressure on it that it maybe that eye wasn't completely shut and it slid through somehow.
Well, I'm not saying that this isn't my fault. I'm not saying that the braid wasn't, a year old, and I don't change.
I need to change my braid too.
I needed to flip it.
It's getting
fuzzy.
After
I broke that one off, I stripped it all off, and I had another spool of braid laying there in the boat, and I put it on there. I wasn't testing it again.
So I got to ask you a question though. Did you get a lot of bites doing that? Did you get a few?
No.
Okay. It's still not going on yet, is it?
Pretty miserable day.
Yeah. 3
fish. But I'm too damn hard-headed to quit. Because I know it's kind of like Kentucky Lake right now. It's that time of the year, and you put your trolling motor down and you cover water. And you cover water until you get tired of covering water. You go sit down and run the motor for a little bit, and then you go and do the same thing for another 2 miles. And I got 3 bites doing it, and I talked to my dad and my brother, who both caught fish over 4, multiple fish over 4, and they were not doing what I was doing.
They were doing the summertime thing, weren't they? Yep. It's still.
I don't know.
But when it happens, you're going to be.
I'll be right there.
You'll be ahead of the curve.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, you'll have a couple of the best days of your life or of the year before everybody figures it out.
Oh yeah, and I'm waiting for that because we got a tournament this weekend. So.
Yeah, it's got to be close. What's the? Have you been out on Kentucky Lake recently, like in the last week or so?
No, I haven't. I did. Other than going down here and fishing off the bank, then with my wife, I have not been on the lake in probably over a week. But the water temperature is getting on down towards 70 degrees now. Probably now. It was right around 73. So we've had some pretty cool mornings. So I'd say it's probably getting down there around 70 to 73 degrees. And the lake's 354. I think it's right around 354.8. So it's getting within 8 inches of winter pool. So it's low, and it's starting to cool off. So the shad have really been a lot more active in the evenings. They're starting to really get back in the creeks a lot better, especially in the evenings. Seeing a lot more shad activity, especially early in the morning, late in the evening. So fall's in the air.
Happy anniversary, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael says, if Terry didn't fish professionally, what would you be doing?
Well, Michael, I guess, and, something a lot of people don't know is, actually now, even though I still fish professionally, but I am also a safety consultant. So I actually work in safety. And so I kind of have two jobs now. So, I'm working a shutdown here at Calvert City this week at a chemical plant where I'm site safety. And, we just hired in 70 some odd, pipe fitters and millwrights and laborers. We got a big shutdown going on. So, that's probably what I would have done, because that's actually what my degree was in when I graduated from Murray State University in 1994. It was in occupational safety and health engineering. But for 20 years of my life, I just fished, and that's all I did. And then, of course, as I got older, I kind of had an opportunity to get involved and still fish, and that's what I do now.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that until they see me on a construction site, and they go, "What are you doing here?" I thought, you guys know I actually went to school and I graduated. My parents money for me to do this. And
I'm not just a bum that fishes every day. Come on, guys.
Funny, because I've been at Fort Campbell on a construction site, and I'll be walking across a job site with a hard hat on, and some guy go, "What are you doing here?" And I went, "What do you mean?" They go, "Weren't you fishing?" I went, "Well, you guys know I actually, I have a degree." And, so it's kind of funny. It's humorous, because I run into a lot of people in fishing, that on construction sites. And, I used to go up into, we've had jobs in Missouri and Illinois and different places. So I run into people all over the place.
That's pretty cool.
So if you see me on the construction site, don't look at me and go, "What are you doing here?" Now.
Well, and make sure you're doing the right thing, because you're the safety man.
That's right. Make sure you got your hard hat, safety glasses, gloves, all that stuff.
PPE.
That way I don't have to do my job.
That's right. That's right.
Do you wear your tournament shirt while you're on the site?
No.
He's got to wear high vis. Come on now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, FRs and high vis, doesn't get any better than that.
Daniel T says, "I thought this channel was Bash University. I got my PB that I actually weighed on a technique I learned from Gabe." Yes. We're slowly working our way up to Bash University level. Fishing with Dave. Fishing with Dino says, "I wish he could make the Jetta Marina open house for Terry's seminar." So you're talking down there at the Jetta Marina?
Yeah, that'll be this Saturday at Jetta Marina. Hank Parker will be there. I believe, I'm not sure. I can't remember. I can't remember the seminar. I'm going to do a seminar at 11, and I believe Hank is doing one at 12, I believe. But Hank Parker is going to be there all day. I think it's from 8 to 3, open house at Jetta Marina at Calvert City in Kentucky. So, if anybody's close, come on over. And, if you hadn't got to meet Hank Parker, you're missing out, because he's the same kind of person you see on TV. He's the same person in real life. He's a lot of fun.
I can second that. I met him at the Classic a couple years ago, and he's all time. It's just the same guy. Like you said, he's just Hank Parker.
That's right. That's right. I got to fish with him several years ago, and he's always playing jokes on you while you fish. He'll say, "Hey, what's that over on the bank? Is that here?" And he'll reach over and try to tap your line and make you set the hook, make you think you got a bite. He really does that stuff.
Oh, that's
man,
awesome.
That works every time. If you're not focused and somebody hits their rod to it or their rod butt, it's
either you bird doggy.
Man,
I love it. I love it.
Stephanie says, "What's the best color spinnerbait in clear water? Are you chartreuse and white even in clear water?"
Well, I think in clear water, I would go with a white, or maybe even more of like a translucent, like a silver flake type bird. If the water's pretty clear, there's a lot of good translucent colors now. Silver flake. I'm trying to think of, but like I said, I said chartreuse and white in the beginning, but I do have some other colors I throw depending on how clear the water is. But I still say 98, 99% of the bass I catch are on those two colors.
Mm-hmm.
That clear water isn't. It's not my first choice for a spinnerbait. Super clear water,
unless you got a lot of wind.
A lot of wind, clouds.
Cloud cover.
Yep. But
yeah,
I'm not throwing if it's slicked off calm and a clear lake, I'm not throwing a spinnerbait.
Well, that's true. I mean, a lot of the spinnerbait can be a situational bait as far as watercolor or wind. It does work better in certain situations, but if you've got real clear water, you're right. It's usually not your first choice.
Are you throwing the spinnerbait typically on what line size do you typically throw, and then maybe what rod action do you throw?
I throw 17-pound Bass Pro Shops, 100% fluorocarbon, and that's predominantly what I throw most all the time. And I've got a 6'10" rod. I just came out with it. I cast. It's a Jinko Gambler rod, Gambler series rod. It's a 6'10". I like a 6'10" size. It's a medium heavy, and because number one, it's short enough that I can throw it up around a target, yet it's still long enough that I can throw it out over deep water, and I can still kind of I still use the rod to manipulate the bait. So I don't really want too long a rod, but I don't really want an extra short rod either. You know, I feel like if I use a 7.2, 7.3, it's a little more rod for me to move. And not that there's anything wrong with that length, but I think just for my height and size, I think that fits me better.
Yeah, I got to handle the Jinko rods recently. I stayed with Lance Freeman a couple times before the BFLs, and he had several of the Jinko rods, and seemed like a pretty nice rod. I mean, I haven't fished with them yet, but they seem like they're balanced pretty well, and he says a lot of good things about them. I didn't know you had your own spinnerbait model though. That's pretty cool.
Well, I won't say it's mine, but I kind of helped. You know, I kind of helped come up with the action and the length and the size. I really won't say it's mine. I'll just say I had some input into kind of what we were trying to get a good spinnerbait rod. So that's one we did. I wanted a 6'10" rod. You know, I wanted that action. You know, and that's really kind of what we hit. We just came out with that at ICAST.
I like that little bit shorter rod too for short, close quarter target fishing.
Yeah, it makes a difference
for sure.
Sean's got a question. He says, Terry, how's the Asian carp problem on Kentucky Lake? Are they keeping them in check?
Well, it's better than it has been in several years. I mean, don't get me wrong. We still have quite a few Asian carp, but it's not near as bad as what it was. I mean, they're still fishing for them. You know, there's still lots of people bow fishing for them, but they don't seem to be near as bad as they were, say 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I noticed in the super tournament on Kentucky Lake, we went out of Paris, so we were south, and I saw quite a few more Asian carp down there, but I think it had to do with the water temperature cooling slightly too. I don't know exactly how that all works, but I know when we'd been fishing up out of the dam and the Moores area, it didn't seem like we saw quite as many carp up there, but out of Paris, it seemed like we saw more. So
well, too, your day to day makes a difference too. When it's calmer, they're going to be up near the surface more. You know, when it's windier, they're going to be down more. Then you're not going to see them unless you see them on the depth finder. But I know this year, like especially fishing in the spring, and me and my wife going bluegill fishing. You know, I never had one jump in the boat with me this year. You know, I never had them even jump. You know, where the past years I always did.
That's a good sign.
My dog's over here. She must be wanting outside, Chloe. Here, you want to get on TV?
She want to be on YouTube. Hey, puppy.
She's wanting to.
That's the same dog.
I think she's trying to tell me something. I think
she's trying to say something. Didn't you drop a video? It was a while back, but where there were Asian carp in the hoop net, and she was out there kind of barking at them or walking back and forth.
Yeah, they were jumping that net, and it had that. See here, Chloe, you want to get on me?
There you go. Oh, what's up, puppy dog? You bring my little puppy down here too.
Yeah, they ran a lot of nets across this bay this winter, and they'd run them right here off of my dock. And of course, those carp were trying to jump the net, and she did not like that, none whatsoever. She was barking at those carp, you know, because they were trying to jump the net. Yeah, I did a video because it was kind of humorous, you know. Then they're watching her.
She just wanted to get out there and play with them or eat them.
Well, she didn't know what they were, but she didn't.
She just wanted to get after them.
Chris says, "What
That's right.
what happened to the milfoil in Kentucky Lake?"
It's the $1 million question.
Good question. Good question. I mean, 1994 seemed to be the point when it all kind of went south. And that spring of 94, we had a lot of really heavy rains. The water got extremely dirty, and it pretty much left then. I mean, we've had a couple instances where hydrillas come back, in the mid to late 2000s there, 2010, 2012, right in there. I think that was right. We had some hydrilla that showed up down from, about the Blood River Islands south into Tennessee to Danville to New Johnsonville that was very thick. And then we had a lot of high water, a lot of hard current rains, and that pretty well washed all that out. And ever since then, it just hadn't showed back up. I don't know.
Yeah, Brad, I do the same thing. Brad says every time he loses or breaks one off, he always tells himself that it was a crappie, not a bass or catfish.
Mine's catfish.
Or gar, drum, or
something.
A rough fish.
No, drum, every drum that I've ever hooked's been in the boat. I promise you that. Because I've caught a lot of drum in that last hour of the tournament in a muddy water situation, and they roll and you think it's just a giant.
Yeah. CJ says, do you finesse fish very much on Kentucky Lake?
I do a little bit. I do actually. I do throw a drop shot some, and I do. I throw a wacky rig like a Zoom Zlinky around a Cinco type bait. And I do that quite a bit. I used to. I throw a shaky head some, but I've never been a big Ned rig guy, so. But generally when I fish here, I tend to kind of, I always tell the people I like to fish with stuff with skirts, jigs, spinnerbaits, I like to fish with big stuff. But at times that's true, finesse fishing does pay off, but I don't do it a lot, but it does work. What do you want?
Here's a question. This is something I wanted to definitely get into. He says, when will the TB5 be out?
It should be here the end of October, this month.
Oh,
it'll be here.
Right there it is.
So that's the new line of crankbaits by Jinko Fishing. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
It's a TB5. And it should be here this month.
What was that first color you held up?
What's that?
What was that first color? No, the other one. Is it like a Tennessee shad?
Well, it's kind of a white with a chartreuse and a brown back. Okay. Now this one here is this. I like that. Tennessee shad. Kind of a Tennessee shad with a little dark.
I'm gonna put you on solo.
There you go.
That way we can see really good. So that bait dives down to basically what's the depth range of that?
This is about a 5-foot running bait. I mean, you can get a little bit deeper than that. You can get it down to about 6 or 7, but predominantly on 14, 15 pound line, I can get it to about 5 feet. And the bait, as you can see, it's got a loud rattle in it. It's got a fairly wide wobble. It is a round bill bait. As you can see, it has a little bit of an offset. If you look at that bait, see where it comes off and around, there's a little bit of an offset before it meets the body. And that tend to be kind of an accident, but a happy accident that when we were kind of working on the bait, and the young man that was working on that, it actually gives the bait a lot better hunting action. But in other words, the bait will kind of get off center or get off to the left, come back to the center. So I wanted to make a bait that was kind of a, has there been round bill crankbaits? Yeah, sure. There's been those baits made, but I wanted to make a bait that would be a good all-around bait, a bait that you could pick up and throw it down the bank in the spring. You could throw it in the summer. You could throw it in the fall. I wanted to make a good all-around bait. And I've always been a big fan of round bills. And not that there's anything wrong with square bills, but I've always liked a round bill bait better in wood cover. And I wanted to make a bait with a wide wobble, a round bill, something I could fish around stumps, trees, rocks, gravel, whatever I came to. I want to be able to fish it. And I always tell people, you get a lot of good feedback from this bait. It's got a good thump to it, like a Colorado bladed spinnerbait. So what I always tell people is, if one thing about the TB5, if you're reeling it back to the boat and all of a sudden you don't feel anything, set the hook, because one's got it.
Yeah. So how many colors is that going to come in?
There's going to be 11. And I've got just a few. I've just got a few of them here. See, I don't even know. I don't have all the colors. Of course, we got a chartreuse and a black, obviously. And we have a chartreuse. And it's kind of got a real kind of a metallic blue back to it. Oops. Let's see.
Yeah, show that one again.
And I don't have spring. Oh, that one again?
Yeah, because you're froze up, but there we go.
Oh,
that's pretty.
Yeah, it's a real pretty kind of almost a metallic blue.
Metallic blue.
And then I don't have this. I don't have the spring crawl. This is kind of a chartreuse, a little orange belly crawl.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't believe, and I don't have all the colors yet, because a lot of the pre-prototypes that we were working on. So I've got a few of them. I've got actually a pearl white and a black back tied on a rod in the boat. That's the one I've been throwing a lot here lately on the lake, and I've caught several fish on it. Of course, I kind of tried to keep all the colors pretty simple. White and black, chartreuse and black. And tried to hit. We've got a red. We've got a fire. Like a fire crawl type bait, a spring crawl. We've got a couple other different crawls. So I tried to hit on all the good colors and not to get too crazy, but we have them in 11 colors.
How durable is that bill on that bait?
Well, so far it's been pretty durable. I should have brought the one I've been throwing a lot in, because it looks like I've been throwing it now here and caught a bunch of fish, and it looks like bulldogs have been chewing on it. So, it's all plastic. Like I said, it's got a weight transfer system in it. So awesome. The weight from one end to the other helps you cast. It's a 3/8 ounce bait. Like I said, the bill's fairly, it doesn't have a real thin bill on it, so it's very durable. Yeah. You make a bad, hit a dock, hit a rock, because, Lord knows I can't see anymore. So, I got to have something tough.
Well, we all know some of those round bill crankbaits like that have great hunting action aren't very durable. So that's what.
Here, like I said, I think when we kind of came out with this bait, and if you look at that little offset there in the bill, where it meets the body, that's really kind of one of that helps the action of it.
Yep, I agree with you on that. And you showed that profile of that, and that bill looks pretty hardy. So,
yeah, as you can see, it's got a pretty hardy bill on it.
Yeah.
Yep. I like that. I'm definitely going to be looking for those soon.
So, what's the process of testing a bait? How does that work for people that don't know how? I mean,
well, I went to Harbor Lovin' that works for Jinko, and I went to Harbor with an idea of a size and a body shape, and Harbor essentially made it out of a piece of foam, and then he went in and did a 3D print on a computer, which prints out a plastic bait, and we start there. And then we start kind of adding weights and taking it to the lake and figure out if it's got too much wobble, not enough wobble, and you start going back and forth until you get pretty close to what you want. And then you send it off for a production sample. And that's actually what, see this one here. That's what this is actually a pre-production sample, this bait that I have here. So this is what the baits will look like but we had some that we made a few changes to, as far as colors, tweaking colors or patterns, things like that. So it's not an easy process. It's kind of one of those things. I've been really tickled that I've been able to catch fish on it, and it'll catch fish. And because when you build something and you make it and you're going to put your name on it, you're like, oh gosh, I hope this thing catches fish.
Yeah.
A lot of really good friends that if they buy this bait and they throw it out there and get it hung up, trust me, I'm going to hear about it. They're going to say, hey, Terry, look at your bait. I got hung up in a tree. Now, obviously, any crankbait's going to get hung up. This one does a good job of coming through cover. Well, but then again, I've never met a crankbait that wouldn't get hung. So, but this one comes through cover well. Is it perfect? No, but it comes through cover well.
Yeah, you don't want your tires slashed and all the lug nuts loosened up on your trailer tires.
Well, no, I got a lot of good friends, and if it does something that's less than stellar, I'll hear about it. Trust me.
Well, those are the ones that you're good friends, right?
They're being honest.
They're being honest.
That's my good friends, the ones that talk to me every week. It's the one, that's the ones, the ones, the ones that that's the ones that's the ones I'm worried about, like Danny Moorhead, some of them. Hold on, let me plug his phone back in here.
You're good.
Okay, sure.
Actually,
so while you're doing that, we had Dion Hibden on last week, and we were talking about the Big Bass Bash that happened over the weekend on Lake of the Ozarks, and he had just come out with a new jig, and he said on the stream that if somebody wins the Big Bass Bash on his jig, that he will take them out in his boat on a guide trip, and he will offer them bottomless 10-cup whiskey. Well, lo and behold, the winner of the Big Bass Bash.
Are we 100% confirmed?
I
saw a picture of a jig laying on the deck and a fish.
I saw a post from Baitworks talking about it.
Okay.
So
good marketing right there.
Okay,
let's
back up. Rumor has it that there we go. That the winner did catch that bass on his new bait. So I actually sent him a text and he hasn't gotten back with me. I said, you better get a full tank of gas and make sure you're stocked on your whiskey because that guy's coming for you. So I thought that was just funny how somebody talks about something and then it happens. And we'll see if he well, I mean, the guy's got $100,000 now, so he may not even.
He probably doesn't even care.
Yeah, he'll just buy his.
I'd be curious if he watched our stream last week.
I don't know.
There was a lot of people on last week, so
it's interesting though. So I thought that was funny. I thought I'd bring that up. And you just never know. So the other weird thing was there were two people that caught the same weight bass in the Big Bass Bash. It was a 6.22 pounds. So it was a tie for the Big Bass Bash.
How do they work?
First place is 100,000. Second place is 20,000. Well, apparently, this is the way it is. Whoever turned in their entry fee first on a tie wins.
Wow.
So the guy that won was just quicker in turning in his entry fee.
Now, when you say entry fee, like your registration,
whoever paid up first,
right?
In case there's a tie,
that guy that didn't, that's got to sting.
Yeah, can you imagine that? That's tough. I mean, I think.
I mean, it's got to be in the rule. It's got to be in the rule, right? Like,
right.
When you read the rules, it clearly states
it's in there. It's in there.
That still stings.
So you would think maybe, I know in a bass club, a lot of times if you tie, first and second place would combine the money and then they'd split it. That's one way of doing it.
Or if it's a 5-fish bass club, Big Fish gets it.
Right.
Or
longest fish.
Or something. Yeah.
But I think they should go back out for 2 hours and whoever catches the biggest fish wins.
Just do
or have a little mini, like a little short 5-fish tournament or something. Just something to make it, build the drama. But gosh, so the guy that got second lost $80,000 because he didn't turn his entry fee in quicker.
Well, I don't know the situation. I don't know, but probably one of them, the first day it came available, one of them was there.
Yep.
And the one that, I think I don't have anything going on this weekend, or or the wife's going out of town. I think I'll fish that this weekend. And he turned his entry fee on Thursday morning.
Yeah. So that's a hard pill to swallow. Hard pill to swallow. But he still did win $20,000.
Yeah, it's still
so you got to think of it like that.
Yeah, we can't be thinking of the negative of it.
Right.
I mean, he's got $20,000. He's walking around, and you and I are sitting over here with lit in the bottom of our pockets.
Yeah, he paid $190 and turned it into $20,000
over a weekend.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good. So just interesting little tidbit there.
How's the new house, by the way? Last time we were on, you were in a trailer.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. We moved in here November 15th of last year. So,
okay.
Yeah, we've been here a year, and yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. My wife did an amazing job picking everything out.
That was a very wise comment.
Let's say that was a
good comment.
A good comment and a smart.
Truth too.
I'm terrible at that stuff. I'm colorblind as they come, so it doesn't matter.
I mean, it's the truth. I mean, it's
going through some of these comments here.
Yeah. South Jersey says, "Do you ever throw a wiggle wart?"
Well, I do throw a wiggle wart, obviously, whenever I've been out. And I always throw one whenever I'm on the White River Lakes, Lake of the Ozarks, Table Rock, some of the lakes in Arkansas. Yeah, I mean, I've got a box of wiggle warts in the building out here, but it seems like they only come out when I go to the White River, fisheries. Now here on Kentucky Lake, I don't throw one. I've caught a few bass on it. Actually caught more bass on the flatwort, the old flatwort here, than I have the wiggle wart. But no, I do throw them, and just usually it's on the White River chain.
Have we even brought that up yet?
Yeah, we got into a pretty deep discussion on the walleye cheating guys right at the very beginning. So
good. I'm
South
glad
Jersey, go back and check out the replay. We kind of ran it on.
I didn't have my. I meant to bring my 8-pound lead weight necklace in, but
yes,
I forgot. I'm glad you guys covered that before I got here. So
I wanted to ask you about Pickwick Lake. We are the regional is on Pickwick coming up in 2 weeks. And what have you heard about how it's fishing? And I've heard that there's not a lot of grass. I know you were down there earlier this year. Well,
yeah,
what can you tell us about it?
I went down there. Of course, I went down there early. I left here, because I can be from my house right here where I'm sitting. I can be on Pickwick, and I can probably be on Pickwick in an hour and 45 minutes. And I drove down there. Of course, the water was still low before we fished our pro circuit event there. And I went down there and drove the lake because I just went with the basis of wanting to see where the grass was. And I was not able to find any hydrilla that I ever saw. That was back in April, though. I did find some eelgrass that was still on the backsides of some of the bars and stuff that had, survived the winter and the current. But I was not able to find any hydrilla when I was there. Now, I've not heard if any of it ever came up, because a lot of times that hydrilla shows up a lot of times in May, middle into May. So I haven't heard if there's any grass. I would think there'd still be some eelgrass because that's a pretty hardy type grass. But I don't know if there's any hydrilla that has come up this year, because I haven't been back down there since we were there in April. But I do know about Pickwick. I've had some runs there throughout the year. Made my first All-American there in the regional in '94, and had a series there in the fall where I finished some good events there. And I've caught them that's the thing about Pickwick. I've caught them a few times up there in the river, from up toward the dam on a 3/4 half-ounce spinnerbait, fishing it in the current, in the eddy seams and stuff. And then I had one real good event there where, I caught them on a 3/4 ounce football jig and 17 to 25 feet of water in the fall. So that's the thing about Pickwick. It can throw you a curve. You can be looking shallow, and sometimes, those fish will be out there deep, and you can catch them. You can catch them good too at times. Sometimes, or not. It may not be like June, but you can catch them pretty fair at times.
how did the fish relate to the eelgrass versus? I mean, because the eelgrass is kind of I know it's been around forever, but it seems like the last 5 years you started hearing about the eelgrass and in some of these lakes. And do they use it the same way as milfoil, or is it like is it different? How do you, I mean, and how do you fish that stuff?
Well, of course, the eelgrass it's a little harder to fish, certain baits through it. But I mean, eelgrass a lot of times it'll grow. I think they'll use it a lot, like just like they would milfoil. Where the milfoil a lot of times and coontail and stuff. What do we look for in the fall? We look for clumps, right, where the grass starts to clump and break up. And but I think a lot of times the eelgrass, they'll get on those edges where it's starting to break up. In other words, it'll be real irregular, and there may be little turns and little points and little isolated islands and clumps. Something that gives them a lot of different angles and ambush points. So, and a lot of times they'll use it, just like they will milfoil. Although eelgrass, of course, doesn't grow to the surface. It only grows so far off of the bottom. But they'll use it a lot of times the same way. They just, it's not as dense as like a milfoil or a hydrilla that actually, kind of canopy or top over. But I don't know. It's a little bit different. Like I said, it's a little bit harder to fish some lures through, like crankbaits and stuff, and lipless baits, which it's a little easier to shed. Sometimes hydrilla and milfoil off of. A lot of times that eelgrass, a hook goes through a blade, and you got to reel it in and pull it off and start over.
Yeah, that's frustrating. No snapping it out of the grass like milfoil or hydrilla.
But you can fish a spinnerbait real good in it.
Does it fish similar to? I've only been there I think I've been there twice, and it was in the late fall, and it was really, really tough. Are there? I mean, how much different is it versus Kentucky Lake? Are there a lot of similarities? Would you say it fishes similar to Kentucky Lake, or does it seem like it's a totally different place?
Well, it's a little bit different because Kentucky Lake, you have more creeks, where Pickwick you don't have as many creeks. A lot of it's is shallow river bars that run the length of up and down that lake. So you don't have as much backwater creek activity as you do, say, in a Kentucky Lake. You do have, you have some, but overall, most of that, it's usually more. It seems like the river section of it plays a lot more in the fall, especially down toward McFarland. Going toward Alabama into Alabama. It seems like that river section really has played a lot more in the last few years. And it always seems to have, and I don't know why that is, but those fish seem to be real sensitive to those bars and the current. And like I said, they'll you can still catch those fish out deep. So it's one thing never, I've always been my theory on the Tennessee River was always, I never like to fish much more than 10 foot deep once you get, past the, once you get into, say, September going into October. But, Pickwick's one kind of exception. Sometimes those bass will get out there deep, because it doesn't have, Kentucky Lake doesn't have a lot of shallow cover, but Pickwick really doesn't have a lot of shallow cover.
Mm-hmm. Rich, I appreciate that. It's mighty kind of you. Go back up here and see if we missed any questions here.
There was one about asking if Terry fished the Cumberland.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Oh, yeah.
You fish Cumberland or Dale much?
I fished Cumberland quite a bit. Never been to Dale Hollow. That's one of the lakes in the United States I've never been to. But I fished quite a bit at Lake Cumberland, and actually the last two, FLW events we had there. I finished third in one and made the top 20 in another. So I've had some really good events there. But I remember going to Lake Cumberland back, 25, 30 years ago, when it wasn't such a great lake, and where 5 or 6 pounds was a good day. So, but I fished Cumberland off and on for 25, 30 years, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship. The first half of my life when I went, I hated it, and the last little bit I've been there, I love it. So,
was there a spinnerbait in play?
Yes. How'd you know?
Just a wild guess.
What's the best lake on the TVA right now?
Man, I would say, just if me thinking out loud, Gunnersville.
Yeah, I've heard Gunnersville's starting to come back too. It's kind of went downhill for a couple of years, but it seems like it's starting to turn around.
I think, and all these lakes cycle about every 5 to 7 years anyways. So I think it was going through a cycle, and, man, when we were there in May, there's a lot of bass in there, and so, I mean, I'd say probably Gunnersville is probably the best lake right now on the TVA system. I mean, I haven't been, of course, I've been on a lot of them this year, but of course, I hadn't been to Nickajack, some of those, but I'd say Gunnersville's the best. Now here Wheeler's coming back too, some now.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So Daryl says smallmouth looking good on Kentucky. Terry, I say yes.
They are. I know I got to fish quite a bit here a few weeks ago, and it seemed like the predominant, species here of late. I mean, if you're going to catch a good fish, has been a smallmouth bass. So, I mean, it seemed like if you went fishing one day and you caught, 7 or 8 bass, 4 or 5 of them were smallmouth. So, yeah, the smallmouth seem to be really looking up. I think you're going to see over the next couple of years, I think you're going to see a lot more and bigger ones caught, kind of like we did back in the early 90s, when we had all those big smallmouth here.
Yeah, it's crazy how just about every tournament bag that you see, there's at least 2 smallmouth in there. If it's a 5-fish limit, there's going to be most likely 2 to 3, maybe even 4 smallmouth in that bag.
That's right. And like I said, and a few years ago we had just a ton of small ones. So I think those fish are starting to reach that 15-inch. And I mean, like I said, I had a guy out here a few weeks ago. Actually, the Saturday that BFL, I took a gentleman fishing that Saturday, and I got him to catch, I think it was a 424 smallmouth, and that was
nice.
His biggest bass ever caught. So, there are some nice ones being caught. I've heard of some 5-pounders being caught. I hadn't caught any of them, but there are some pretty nice ones starting to get caught.
What do you okay? What Phil says, what separates fishing on Barkley from Kentucky Lake? I guess what are some of the differences in Barkley and Kentucky? I mean, how do you approach them differently?
Well, Barkley's a little. What you remember is Kentucky Lake was dammed up in the late 40s, early 50s. Barkley Lake was dammed in the mid 60s. So Barkley's a relatively newer lake than Kentucky Lake. So there's a little more watercolor. The water, and of course, you still got a lot more sediment on the bank, so the water holds a little more color. Where Kentucky Lake has gotten older, the sediment's washed away, and now it's just washing up on rocks. It's starting to clear up more. There's not as much of that shallow cover still left, like stumps, and where Barkley has more stumps and logs and laydowns and shallow cover. So predominantly what I would say the difference being is I tend to catch fish a lot shallower on Barkley Lake than I do, say, Kentucky Lake. I think that's a watercolor and a cover type reason. Not that you can't do it on Kentucky Lake, because you can, but I think I kind of give the nod to Barkley Lake on that this time of year. But predominantly, that's the biggest difference. Barkley has a little more, I guess you could say, defined what I'd call channel banks, bluffs, that type of thing, where Kentucky Lake doesn't. I mean, Kentucky Lake, you kind of got to hunt that kind of thing a little more. And I think it's just the difference in the size, the body of the water, and the age.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. Barkley just always seems to have a lot more cover in the water, like hardwood cover, and so you can pitch
feels more at home, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can pitch and flip a little bit more. That's what I always liked about it.
I bet you could throw a spinnerbait around some of that hard cover too.
Oh heck yeah! Always.
Stuff to
Let's
get hung
ask
up in.
yeah. I'll ask you a few more questions here, and then we'll start kind of wrapping this up. So actually, this is for everybody right here. I had a question. If you could only fish one bait 365 24/7, what would that bait be? If you only had one lure to catch a bass any time of the year.
Terry.
What's it going to be, Terry?
One lure. Yeah, I really want to
Hold
say
on, hold on.
spinnerbait.
I was going to ask. I was going to do a clarifying. Does that include color and everything?
So one bait, and then
The same color, everything.
then go to the color.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
So same color, same weight, same all the way down.
Yep.
Okay.
You get one bait. Somebody hands you one bait, and you got to catch them in
365.
You got to catch them in 38-degree water, and you got to catch them in 90-degree water.
A jig.
Color?
Black and blue.
Weight?
Half ounce.
What about trailer?
I'd go with the Zoom Pro chunk, sapphire blue.
Ooh.
That's exactly what I thought you would say. Down to the T. Down to the T. Because the day I got in the boat with you and we fished that VFL, you were fishing a black and blue jig with a sapphire blue chunk.
Actually, it's a black and brown jig with a blue chunk.
Okay. Well, sorry.
So
got to get technical on
Gabe, what's yours?
Well, mine was going to be a jig as well. But my number
It's not a Ned
two,
rig?
No, heck no. Well, I go in between a jig and a Ned rig. I'm going to go with the shaky head because that was going to be my second, because I feel like you can always get a bite on a shaky head. And I would say a 3/16 ounce weight is my favorite weight. It's pretty versatile, and I'm throwing it on like 12-pound fluorocarbon, and it's going to be probably, gosh, I'm torn between June bug and then green pumpkin purple, but I'd probably go green pumpkin purple because they both get bit in all water conditions. So either or, it doesn't really matter. But I'll probably have it tipped with like a Cinco style bait, something a little fatter, not like a trick worm, but something like a Zlinky, or just something that's a little bit shorter and a little bit fatter. So kind of a glorified Ned rig, you know, but it's hard. So that's for bottom, but then it's like, we should do one for suspended fish.
You
too.
said one lure.
Okay, I said one. All right. What do you got?
Well, I mean, Terry kind of stole the thunder with a jig, but I would probably say a jig, but I wouldn't do black and blue with a blue sapphire chunk. Mine would be, you know what it is. It's going to be brown.
It's going to be brown, right?
And purple with a green pumpkin chunk tipped with orange. 3/8 structure jig. So I'll go a little bit lighter, but I can fish that 3/8 jig on 20-pound test from 20 to 2.
Yeah. See, I'd have to put I was going to pick a jig, but I think my trailer would have been a speed crawl, a Zoom speed crawl, because I think when you want a little bit more action, you can kind of tear those pinchers out, open them up a little bit. It gets a little bit more action. But if you leave them normal,
it falls a little faster too.
Falls a little faster. You can just do a lot with that trailer. Mm-hmm. It's still finessey enough to where you can target those kind of hard to catch fish, those fish that are in a funk, but still got enough meat to it where you're still going to catch a 5 or 6 pounder. But I wanted to say jig. I think it's hard to beat a jig for.
You know what my second one was? It was a close second. It was a tube.
A tube.
Yep. Because a tube can catch them all year long too.
What's your second one, Terry? If you had a second.
Spinnerbait.
Chartreuse and white.
Chartreuse and white.
3/4 ounce. Yep.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I've caught a lot on a 3/4 ounce chartreuse and white spinnerbait. There wouldn't be a Terry Bolton with that.
Well, in Kentucky Lake, fishing all the BFLs down there for years taught me to throw, instead of a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, which that's what I grew up throwing, to throw a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait with a number 6 or number 7 willow leaf on it that just absolutely thumps. So,
yeah. Well, you know, and the thing is, the first red man I ever won here in '98, I won it on a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, but we had millful. So, you know, I caught him out of the millful then.
I like that big swim bait or the big spinnerbait in the early spring when the water, you do too, when the water's still cold out, muddy.
That's my favorite.
Because you, like you were saying a while ago about that trailer hook, the fish that's going to eat that spinnerbait is going to be one of the bigger fish in the lake.
They're going to have a mouth like that.
Like that one right there or that one right there.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell people. I usually don't throw a trailer hook because I fish pretty slow around cover. And the ones that I'm looking for, they're not going to miss it. They're going to get it.
Yeah. So as I was thinking about that question, pretty standard question, but then, you know, with the jig, you can drag it, but you can also swim that jig, which is nice. So you're getting multiple presentations out of one bait.
Yep.
With a shaky head, it's basically a dragging bait. You can swim a shaky head. I have caught some fish reeling a shaky head, and not because, especially if you got a longer worm, it kind of does like a little tight tail action.
Yeah,
it's probably underutilized.
Like a zoom,
but just like a trick worm.
Well, trick worm does, but I'm thinking of a zoom. Gosh dang it!
What, the Magnum?
No, the pedal tail. What's the pedal tail one? Speed worm.
Oh, right.
Speed worm.
That speed worm does that little 6-inch speed worm. That's a heck of a little shaky head bait.
It is. I caught some fish at Lake of the Ozarks recently on that. It's kind of been my new little secret shaky head bait. That's okay. It's okay. We throw out all the juice out here, but that's
I mean, not that I throw a shaky head, because if I'm throwing a shaky head, it's going to be a shotgun shell. It's a 1/2 ounce head with a 6-inch Cinco on it. But
you throw the big stuff.
It's right.
Let's see. A lot of people said worm was one of their favorites.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with a worm either.
Creature baits, worms,
swim jig. I would say as a second for me though would be an underspin with a
would be a good one,
because that covers you can catch fish when it's really cold on an underspin, slow rolling an underspin, and then when it's warm you can, and that targets those fish that are suspended.
The hard to catch fish.
The hard to catch fish. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch for me.
I always love coming over and seeing little boxes on your desk.
Yeah, I know. I've always got fishing stuff laying around. Let's see here. Let me check these comments real quick. See if there's any questions on here. Yeah, that's right, Sean. You can drag a jig, or you can swim. It's very versatile.
Yep.
Let's see here. So what do you do? Do you hunt? Or like, what do you do in between this time of the year and when tournament season starts kicking back in?
You know, I don't hunt as much. I used to do a lot of duck hunting. I still do a little bit. Actually, last year I didn't do any. Of course, we were building this house. So my wife loves to deer hunt, loves to bow hunt, but we're expecting a grandchild here in the next few weeks. Anytime from while we're on, doing this show tonight, for the next few weeks, we're expecting a grandchild. So I don't know that we'll really get to do hunting this fall or early winter. I got a feeling we'll be busy doing something else. So, I spend a lot of time doing a lot of different things. I work here around the house, and I've got 3 dead trees. I got, doing some fishing, bass fishing. Backers, little first, 10 to back always here. They'll bait and swim bait. Sometimes the crankbait. It's hard to say. Just depending if we got any watercolor. But I always look forward to that time of year. There's some really good jerk bait fishing that, coming up ahead of us.
Yeah. I'm actually.
I miss out on a lot of that because I'm in the duck line. So
You're going to spend more time on the water this year, though, aren't you?
I think so. I'm gonna. That's the goal, is to try to target some of these winter fish that I miss out on. So depends on how duck season goes. If it's got good weather, and it's good weather for duck hunting is usually crappy weather for fishing.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Yeah.
if it's, unless I get those 60-degree days, and then I'll probably be on the lake.
Right.
So
is this going to be your first
It's a
grandchild?
mild. Yes, this will be mine.
Lord
Okay.
help that child.
Congratulations. It's going to be spoiled. That
Spoiled
kid's going to be
rotten.
spoiled. Yeah. Wintertime jerkbait fishing is my favorite time of the year. I like it too. The thing I like a lot about the winter fishing is you're out there by yourself most of the time, which can be good and it can also be bad. You just hope that nothing happens where you need some help, but it is nice. It's like super peaceful out there. The leaves are out of the trees. You can see way up in the woods. You see all the wildlife, and there's no jet skis. There's no pontoon boats. There's no pleasure boaters. It's just
Not many kayakers.
Which, I have nothing against kayakers, but it's just peaceful.
Yeah, it's quiet.
It's quiet. So
Yeah.
I always look forward to that. One more question, and then we'll wrap this thing up. This question's been posed a couple times. Fishing the Southeast wants to know, do you have any experience with glide baits, soft swim baits, hard swim baits, wake baits, things like that?
I don't have much with glide baits. I mean, I've thrown some, but I really don't feel like I'm the guy to ask about glide baits. Of course, with swim baits, yeah, I've had a lot of experience here with swim baits, especially fished them on deep on ledges, and even with wake baits. I've had a little bit of experience here, and that's another thing. We're kind of getting ready to enter, in my opinion, wake baits are always good, but we're getting ready to hit into that water temperature. Once that water temperature gets back down around 60 or below, that's, in my opinion, the best time to fish wake bait. Is a really good bait right there post spawn, like especially on Table Rock. I've had some good success at Table Rock fishing a redfin, especially in the month of April. But we're getting ready to enter a time I really think is a good time for wake bait, and that's coming up here over the next, in the next month, here in the next few weeks, as these water temperatures start to go down.
Thoughts on an A-rig?
I don't really throw an A-rig much anymore. I kind of, it's kind of like when they outlawed it in our tournaments, I just kind of quit. I mean, I've still got the very first Andy Poss A-rigs that he gave me back at Pickwick Lake before anybody ever heard of it. I've still got them out here in a box, and I don't throw it. I mean, when I go in the winter, I throw a single swim bait now, and I don't even throw an A-rig anymore. It's funny. I could, I got a bunch of them in the building, but I hadn't caught a bass on an A-rig in 3 or 4 years, just because I don't throw it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it's really hard on the fish. It seems like when you hook one, they get 2 or 3 other hooks in them, and they get scarred up. I think I'll throw them too. I will, but that's one thing I always hate to see is they get all hog tied, and you got a hook in the tail, hook in the mouth, hook in the side, and you just kind of bring them in. They're just stiff because they can't even move. And I hate seeing that, but a lot of times that's what you got to do to get the bites.
That single swim bait you're throwing in the winter, is that a big one?
No, usually in the wintertime, I'll throw like that Zoom swimmer, the 4.5 inch one, not the big one, not the 5, but I think it's in it. Yeah, it's a 4.5.
Okay, so not a 3 or a 2.8 or 3.3. Still a decent
That's a
size.
hollow body, isn't it?
Yes, it's a hollow body.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good bait in the winter that a lot of people don't know about, but they really like that thing in the winter.
What size head?
It's got a little tighter. Usually, depending on how deep they are, sometimes a 3/4.
Okay.
If I'm fishing any depth, 3/4. But a lot of times I may be fishing 20, 22 feet deep.
Okay. You're getting out there then. Do you put any brush? You plan on putting any brush piles out this winter? That's what Brad was asking.
I did. Me and Jason Sealock, we put a few out this past January, and I would like to try to put some more out this year. You know, the problem is having time to get to do it, but I would like to do some. I got some ideas. Hopefully I'll get a day. I would love to get 3 or 4 days, but that's, you know, who knows if that'll happen. But yeah, I would love to put some more out. And I did do a little bit this year, and I'm hoping to get to do it again this year some too, because nobody does it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lake. These older lakes, it's so important to put fresh cover out there, especially since the lake's kind of starting to turn around. You got the shad population starting to come back, and you need cover. Since the grass is gone, they need some place to hide and spawn and reproduce in that. So that's important. Well, let's wrap this up. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we hang it up, Terry?
No, I can't think of anything. Nothing that I can think of.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you spending some time with us this evening.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, anybody watching, don't forget this Saturday at Jetta Marina, Calvert City, Kentucky. Come out for the open house. Hank Parker will be there. I'll be there. You know, it should be a good time.
Yeah, and keep your eyes peeled for the Jinko TB5. It's coming out at the end of the month.
That'll be here sometime hopefully at the end of this month is what we're looking at.
I'm excited about that one.
Heck yeah.
If you get hung up, don't call and tell me if you get hung up now.
I won't call you. I'll talk bad behind your back, and you know.
Yeah.
Hey, if you ain't getting hung up, you're not throwing a crankbait in the right place.
You know,
everybody knows.
Well, hold on. My daddy taught me though, long time ago, don't throw that crankbait over there because we ain't going to get it again. So it was a learned response for many years of my life to see that brush pile, and I would cast that way, to the left or the right of it. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to be able to cast a crankbait into a brush pile because I got Dad in the back of my head going, "Don't throw it in there; you're gonna get hung up."
But that's where they live.
That's exactly where they live. So,
Michael wants to know if you're bringing any to give away on the Tuesday Night Classic.
Well, I don't think I'll have any to give away. That's the problem. I don't know. I gotta hit up Will. I don't think it depends. Whenever they get in, then I'll have something to give away. But right now, what few I showed you is about all I got.
I hear you, and you're holding on to them.
Don't give away the juice. I don't blame you.
Good deal. All right. Well, we'll wrap this up. Thanks a lot, Terry. Congratulations on the new baby on the way. And I really appreciate you taking time and hanging out with us this evening. So
yeah, guys, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right.
We'll shut her down.
See you all next week.